According to this, I see 0 attendees.
Oh.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Delray Beach Chamber of Commerce weekly webinar. We're super excited today because we have 2 guests from the National Leadership Institute to talk about corporate social responsibility. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you a little bit about Raelyn, who I'm going to invite onto the screen. But before I give you her bio, I just want to let you guys know that this is recorded, so you can find it afterwards, or you can share it with anybody that you think might be interested. It will be on Facebook, YouTube, and the Chamber's website underneath the webinars tab. All right, so Raelyn Barlow, she is the president and CEO of National Leadership Institute, home of Board Match Now. National Leadership Institute is a nonprofit dedicated to board development and leadership training. She manages the content, planning, marketing, and presenting of contemporary educational programs, workshops, and conferences focused on board governance and leadership development, led by best-in-class facilitators and instructors. She is the co-creator of Board Match Now, National Leadership Institute's proprietary software program, which matches nonprofits with passionate, charitable-minded board member candidates. A firm believer in the power of partnerships, she develops and maintains strategic partnerships with other nonprofits, associations, universities, businesses, and sponsors. Raelyn is a frequent moderator for educational panels and a speaker presenter on various nonprofit topics. Prior to joining National Leadership Institute, Raelyn spent more than 25 years in broadcast media, communications, and marketing industry as an award-winning television producer and writer. So Raelyn's on the screen now. Thank you for joining us.
Angel, that was uncomfortable. I should have popped in at the end, but thank you. To sit there and smile the whole time.
But they wanted to see you. That's why I invited you on.
Thank you. So, it was comfortable. You know what I mean.
So we're going to go ahead and invite Jerry Zarnecki onto the screen as well. Jerry is chairman and founder of National Leadership Institute. Jerry is a sought-after national consultant with an unbridled passion for giving back to the nonprofit world. A self-described governance fanatic, Jerry has served on more than 50 international, national, and local nonprofit boards, including United Way, the Nature Conservatory, and Junior Achievement Worldwide. Pulling from a successful C-suite career, plus extensive corporate and nonprofit board consulting, he's written 7 books on leadership and board governance because he believes in running your nonprofit like a business. In 2005, he founded National Leadership Institute, a 501c3 dedicated to improving board governance, leadership development, and contemporary fundraising training. We actually really love Jerry here at the Chamber. He's spoken for us on several occasions, and we just can't get enough of him. We always invite him back. And so, as you guys know, something that we like to do at the end of these webinars, but is going to be particularly great here today, we do a live Q&A. So please type any questions that you have down below and we will make sure to get to them, and Jerry or Raelyn can answer them for you at the end of the presentation. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them. Again, guys, this is recorded. It will be posted to Facebook, YouTube, and the Chamber's website. So if for some reason you have to leave early or you're popping in a little bit late, please know you can always check these out afterwards. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over.
Okay, so Angel, I believe I will start my slideshows. Yes?
Yes, you should be good to go.
Okay, let me do screen share. Let's go over here and we should be ready to go. One more button. There's always that one button.
You had it.
I thought I had it.
You did.
Okay, what are we seeing? Are we seeing our very first slide? We're now in slideshow from the beginning.
Yep.
Okay.
So you currently have your toolbar up still. There we go. We're good to go.
There we go. It took a second, folks. Okay, first of all, listening to your own bio is uncomfortable, right, Jerry? After all these years, is
Yep.
it not uncomfortable for you? And your bio is about 20 pages long. That short version is quite a feat to get to. You're, Jerry.
You want me to comment on that? I'm not
Yeah,
going to
I want
comment
I
on
want to
anybody's
ask before we
bio.
get into corporate social responsibility, are bios uncomfortable? That's my first question.
Well, the answer is yes, and I'm not going to comment. I don't think my bio is 20 pages long, but my
Okay.
resume might be. But
Okay, so from what I've seen and worked from, 20 pages, folks. So anyway, okay, so seriously, no, all kidding aside, today we are talking about corporate social responsibility and how businesses and nonprofits partnering together can be a true win-win for both the business, the nonprofit, and our community. And this is something that's near and dear to the heart of both Jerry and I. So Angel has already done a wonderful job explaining what we are, what National Leadership Institute is and does. So just remember this when you think about us. We build better boards filled with passionate leaders because we believe that creates a stronger community. So we do board training, leadership training, and now Board Match Now, our tech tool that connects folks in the community. So I want to start out with talking a little bit about what's going to happen in today's webinar. So first of all, we're going to talk about what CSR is and the many different names it can come under. It's got a lot of different terms and names associated with it, so we'll touch on those so it's really clear. We're going to talk about some of the benefits to your customers, to your business customers, and to your staff. And I think it's really important once you hear the many ways that this can really help your business bottom line and community image. We're going to talk about the community impact to us as an entire community, what CSR does for us. We're going to give some examples. Jerry's got several, and we're going to do a little brainstorming maybe, and then of course the Q&A, which I think is hopefully all Jerry, so I cannot talk quite so much. That's my plan. And Jerry's just going to smile because he likes it when I have to talk more than him, I think. So, okay.
absolutely.
So Jerry, when we say businesses, would you agree? Corporate social responsibility, we are talking about every size business, independent contractors, sole proprietors. It does not matter necessarily the size of your business. You can have a corporate give back, and this webinar is for every size nonprofit. This is across the board, correct?
Yeah, let me add to that, and that is that Raelyn's going to talk a little bit about what is corporate social responsibility. She's going to talk about different names for it, but I'm going to start you out with an observation, and that is that solid quality leadership of organizations demands, it doesn't just expect, it demands that the leaders focus on all the stakeholders in the organization. And unfortunately, too many people who look at corporate America particularly think that the only thing that matters to corporate leaders is, quote, the bottom line. Now, the bottom line is the way we measure the success of an organization. But the bottom line itself is not how you evaluate the quality of that organization in delivering that success. And it is all too often ignored that there are a variety of people other than the shareholders who have a stake in the business. And those stakeholders, as we refer to them, and by the way, 25 years ago, I started using the word stakeholders, and I got all kinds of glazed over looks from people because they thought I didn't understand that I should have been saying shareholder. And there is no doubt about it. We have come a long way since those days when I was getting cynical looks for using the word stakeholder instead of shareholder. Today, there is no doubt that corporate America itself has accepted the notion that all stakeholders do matter. Bottom line is the way we measure success, but the way we achieve success is to create an environment in which all stakeholders are served. And so this corporate social responsibility concept is really a leadership concept for quality management and quality leadership. So I'll turn it back to you and say, I don't think it does not matter what size the organization is. What matters is that you have a business that you want to be successful. And in order to do that, you have to be able to pay attention to all the stakeholders in an organization.
That's so well said. And Jared, it's important for this webinar for people who are tuning in to understand, sometimes when you hear corporate give back, you think of only those big businesses with a large number of stakeholders, and it's not. The small businesses tuning into this webinar, the independent contractors, there is something in a collaborative partnership for everyone, and we'll talk through that today. So let's do a quick definition. Jerry explained it well, but what the heck is CSR if it's new to you? The idea is that social responsibility is the idea that businesses should balance their profit-making activities with activities that benefit society as a whole. It's be a good corporation, be a good business, be a good leader. So that's the basic bottom line. And it operates off the theory that individuals and companies have a duty to act in the best interest of their environments and society as a whole. So now there's a whole part of this that we're not going to get into today. We're not going to talk about your carbon footprint. We're not going to talk about some of the sustainability. We're going to stay kind of laser focused on CSR in terms of the nonprofit and business partnership and the benefit to us all. So there's a basic definition of CSR, but here's something, it's also known as so many other names. So when you think of it, you've probably heard of it as corporate philanthropy, corporate giving, workplace giving, where your company asks you to donate to a specific cause that the company may have identified. It can be employee volunteerism, community affairs, community relations, community marketing, in-kind donations, in-kind services, product donations, sponsorships, so many terms that are actually aspects of corporate social responsibility. Jerry, did I miss any?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you did, but I'm not going to try. The key point that Raelyn is making here is that there is a connection between the community and the organization that operates within it. And that connection and recognizing that connection and honoring it is what corporate social responsibility is all about. We can't exist as corporations if there's not a society. We cannot exist as an enterprise if there aren't customers, if there aren't employees, if there aren't communities in which we operate. And so, like it or not, and some old line corporate types might not like it or not, we have a duty to be of value to all of those who participate in our business enterprise.
And Jerry, you have a great way. I have the benefit of working with Jerry for, I think, more than 13 years now, might be a little bit longer. So he has been a mentor to me, a coach. We've worked together on National Leadership Institute, so many projects. So I get to hear a lot of his words of wisdom, and I'm blessed by that. And one of the things I think he's always stressed with me is the vital role that nonprofits play in our community, the gap they fill. And Jerry, if you would just kind of share that with folks, because it's so powerful when you really sit down and think what they do.
Well, the irony is that there's no doubt about it, this is not intended to be a political statement, all right? It will sound to some of you like it is, but it is not intended to be a political statement. Government simply can't meet all the needs of our society. We as individuals have to take care of ourselves, but we as individuals have to recognize that there is a role that we have in being part of the community. So as individuals, as human beings who live in this society, we are in fact a part of a community, and we owe the community our fealty, our commitment. Well, if that's true about individuals, then the same thing is absolutely true about corporate enterprises, businesses, whether it's a corporation or an LLC. Those words don't mean anything. It's a business enterprise. And that business enterprise operates within the community that it serves, within the community that it exists in. And it can't just stand back and expect the community to be taken care of by government, big or small, or by every other individual in the community. We are a part of the community as well. So as organizations, and we are organs of the community. And as organs, we have a responsibility to participate in the community. And that is why not-for-profits are so important, because not-for-profits provide services in the community by virtue of the value transferred to them by the society. And instead of looking to government to solve all problems, the irony is that some of, particularly at the local level, the more effective, the more efficient delivery of social services comes out of these very not-for-profits that we're asked to support. It's the close to the community feel of the not-for-profit that is so important. So our ability to be able to serve the community through the not-for-profit community is absolutely essential. And it's better than relying on some big governmental agency that is hundreds, if not thousands of miles away.
And I'm just going to repeat what you said off the top because I think it's important. That was not a political statement. It is a fact. The government cannot fill all the gaps in our society. Thus, nonprofits are vital. So thank you. That was, as usual, so eloquently put and passionately put. So my next question for you, Jerry, is, okay, so CSR, corporate social responsibility, corporate philanthropy, giving back, ever since last year's racial equity spotlight, COVID happening, so many things have happened. CSR has kind of moved up higher in the food chain of public awareness, if you will. So we're seeing more and more companies hiring a VP of CSR. We're seeing them add a community marketing director, a community awareness director, a civic engagement director. There's all these different titles, but basically across America, people are looking as companies to get more involved. Is this a fad that's going to fade? Is this a trend that's going to continue and thrive? What do you think is happening? And we're seeing so much more of it since last year, since 2020.
Well, I'm going to balance my response by saying this. I've been in leadership and management positions long enough to have experienced the flavor of the day many times over. And when I go back to the beginning of my leadership career, the things that we talked about then had different labels, different titles. And over time, as time went on, these things that we do as leaders, as organizations, to do our job, if you will, in society, have gotten different labels, lots of different labels. And so because I've been around long enough, the label doesn't matter to me. That's why CSR doesn't mean a thing to me. In and of itself, the name doesn't mean anything. It's what it means to the society that matters. And so I think that on one hand, a cynic could say it's a fad. On the other hand, a person who really thinks about it carefully says, what we're doing here is bringing greater attention to something that we probably should have been doing all along, and that we let it slip from our awareness. And so the fact that we've got VPs of corporate social responsibility, the fact that we have directors of this and directors of that, it's an admission, in my opinion, an admission that the corporation did not embrace and embody in its culture the values that we're talking about society and the need to give back and embrace all of the constituents in the society. So for me, it's simply an admission that we've got to get our act together and pay more attention to these issues that are critical or at the core of our organization's right to exist. And so no, I don't think it's a fad. I think the words might be a fad because we've used a bunch of different words to describe the same things time and time again over time. But what I hope is not a fad is the awareness by corporate entities that they have a social duty to care about their stakeholders, and it has to be baked into the culture of the organization. And having somebody with a label that says corporate social responsibility vice president is not the way to do it. That may be helpful to bring awareness to it, but the way it happens is when it's part of the fabric and culture of the organization. And that takes leadership across the organization, not just at the top, not just at some director level, but it takes the entire organization to embrace this concept of our duty to be responsible, caring citizens in the communities that we operate.
Well, and you know what, Jerry, I want we could discuss this go back and forth on just this point alone. I think it'd be very interesting, but I want to get to some statistics that may help business owners, business leaders understand it a little bit better, because I think it's not a bad thing that we're seeing more and more of these positions being created across corporate America and South Florida, even within our Delray ranks within Broward County, Miami-Dade County. Stories are popping up all the time about the increase. It's not a bad thing. I think that people are focusing on putting more of a focus on it is a positive. So we'll leave it there and talk a little bit about customers. So if you are a business and you're not quite sure why you should really give back, you're a good business person, you're a good community person, you think you do enough already. So what are some more reasons why you should consider a corporate give back plan or a business give back plan? Well, there are a lot of studies out there that show that 66% of customers will pay more for products and services from a company that has a give back mentality. So now listen, folks, disclaimer here. The statistics there are a lot of statistics. Some go as high as 82% of customers will pay more. So, but what is proven over the last couple of years, last year and this year, and a lot of different studies I looked at before today's presentation, 66% of your customers will pay more if they see that you care, if they see that you're doing something about it. And an international study, I put this in just because it was fascinating. It was mind-blowing to me. 90% of global consumers in a global study done by a high-ranking research company says customers will switch brands if you have a good cause connection and if you promote it, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in a minute. But it's a win-win. So if you're the kind of business leader that is going, I'm just thinking about my bottom line, your bottom line is customers care about who you give to and how you treat your community. So Jerry, I've got some more statistics. I know statistics are boring, but they're also powerful and eye-opening. So before I go to the next one, any comment here?
Yeah, let's not kid ourselves either. There has been a shift in the demographics in our society. And the younger generations,
yes,
not just the magic millennials, but the younger generations, above and beyond the age groups of what we call the traditional millennials today, the younger people in our society have said, wait a minute, I care about the issues in our society, in our world as a whole. And if you don't care, then I'm going to hold you accountable for that. And if you don't do something to demonstrate to me that you care about this, meaning you have a corporate social responsibility and you act that way, you don't just talk that way, but you act that way, then I will hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. And my way of holding you accountable is to withhold my business. And so this is a reality, and it has happened over time, and there's no doubt about it. The older generations today haven't migrated quite as quickly as the youth have, but even the older generations today are starting to ask the question, why should I do business with you if you don't show that you care about me and about the society in which I live? So Raelyn's statistics are stunning, and they ought to be a wake-up call for every organization out there that says, all I care about is making money, and my bottom line is what matters. My answer to that is your bottom line is dependent on having a customer. The customer pays the bills, and the customer gives you the top line that ends up floating down to the bottom line. And without a customer, or for that matter, without an employee who provides the service or product to that customer, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. You have a hobby, and that hobby will break you if you don't have customers and employees committed.
You know, and we're going to get to some examples in a minute because this is big picture. This is setting the stage. And there's one that I don't have a slide for, but I want to make sure I mention. It's a South Florida business leader that is doing some amazing things with almost no money. So those of you out there listening that think you have to have a big budget and be making a lot of profit in order to give back to the community or partner with a nonprofit, we say absolutely not. That is not the case, and we'll get to that. So a few more stats. I know, folks, stats are boring, but they're eye-opening. So let's talk about trust. Your customer, your consumer. Now, these stats are coming from a Nielsen survey and a global study on sustainability. So when you see these numbers, again, they were factoring carbon footprint and sustainability, your environmental impact in. So these numbers are a little high. So there's your disclaimer, but trust. So your consumer, 90% of consumers are more likely to trust your company if you have a reputation for giving back. So think about the people you see constantly sponsoring an event, partnering, being visible at some nonprofit event. We'll give them credit where credit is due. You see FPL, you see UKG, formerly Ultimate Software. You see Kaufman Rawson. You see so many in the Del Rey community. I can give you a long list and I'm leaving people out, so that's dangerous. But companies that have a reputation for giving back, consumers automatically trust them more. And there's a lot of research on this. So also, selection. Customers consider CSR maybe more than ever when they're deciding what to buy and where to shop. And to Jerry's point, I think that goes back to the millennials and younger. The younger generations coming up are paying attention to what you care about. So if you want your bottom line to be as robust as it can be, it's something to think about. And also just recommendations. According to these two studies, and I merged the numbers, 82% say your corporate give back philosophy matters. If they're even just going to recommend you and say to a friend or family member, hey, I really like this company, they do blank. If you give back, they're more likely to pay attention to you. So two more quick points, and I think these are powerful. So 84% from this Nielsen survey and the global study say they want your CSR mindset. They want CSR mindset, They want to know about it, and they want to see what type of business you're doing within their community. People are kind of monitoring now who's out there, who's doing things, who's making money and spending it and investing it back into our community. So if you want their support, their business, you got to support them. And this last one, Jerry, I think you can probably back this up personally. Employment. When you want to hire someone, 79% of employees consider the corporate atmosphere, the corporate give back atmosphere, when they're deciding where to work. So if you want the best employees, give back a little bit more and you might have the best pool. Jerry, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that.
Well, I do, but I'm gonna actually throw in a comment that has got to be going through the mind of at least a few people who are watching this webinar. And going back a few slides when Raelyn talked about consumers being prepared to even pay up for a product or a service from a company that has CSR commitment. The fact is that you have to be prepared to recognize that there's not sitting there and saying, well, it's a high priced product, but they're good guys, so I'm going to buy it anyhow. You can't get the consumer to pay you a premium that they believe is a premium that you're baking in order to cover your give back to the community. So there is the raw fact of economics eventually takes over, right? And even though they make the statement in that survey that they do, if you have an uncompetitive price because you are blowing a lot of money on social programs that are of you fancy, and it blows up the cost of operation so much that it blows the price out of competitive framework, you will not get the business, right? There is still the reality of price. People do care about price, right? So don't get fooled into thinking, well, all I'll do is I'll just start doing all these social responsibilities and I'll just increase my price, all right? That is a strategy for failure. That is a strategy for failure. You have to be prepared to live by the laws of economics as well, which are you have to have a price that's competitive against those in the marketplace.
Yes.
But
yes.
Given that you care about this community in which you operate, you are going to be, this is a Jerry forecast, you're going to be more cost effective because the community will give back to you. Your employees will give back to you with loyalty and fealty to you and your organization. Because every time you lose an employee because they decided it was not the place they wanted to work, there's the added cost of getting a new employee, training a new employee. So maintaining employee satisfaction and commitment to you because of your commitment will help to reduce your turnover rate and therefore manage more effectively your cost of operations. So these things are clearly intertwined. They're clearly intertwined. And so the data, though, that Raelyn has shown you is truly compelling. You can't ignore the fact that there has been a sea change of attitude here that is far different than what we saw in society 25 to 50 years ago. It has dramatically shifted. The consumer cares more about these things today overtly in their behavior than they did back then. They may have cared about it back then, but they didn't act upon it. Today, consumers and employees and communities alike are acting on it. And they're saying, you need to be there with us because we're in this together.
Yeah. And Jerry, this next slide, you just already nailed it. But I do want to say something. And I was paging through, folks. If you could see my desk right now, I still print some things. So my environmental footprint for this project was a little high. There was a study, and it did say when consumers are comparing, it's competitively priced products. So they're not going to pay an obscenely higher amount for your product because you are known for a corporate philanthropy mentality. So that is a critical point. It was comparing like-minded products with similar pricing. So you can charge a little bit more, but you can't get crazy. So that was an excellent point, and I wanted to reinforce that. The other thing, and Jerry, you just touched on that. So as a business owner, when you think about corporate give back, getting involved with a nonprofit, when you think about community relations and community affairs, you can get more engaged employees and staff out of this. And this is a study by the U.S. Chamber Foundation. The U.S. Chamber Foundation says that engaged employees feel more respected by their employer. They feel more free to be their authentic self at work. Therefore, they're more creative and more dedicated. They're more motivated to develop their skills because they may take those skills to a nonprofit where they practice them outside of your business environment. And they overall just feel more energized and creative when they feel like the company they're a part of is active in the community. So number one, engaged employees as a business owner. There's a value there. There's a dollar amount to that. I don't have the stat, but I bet you it's in this pile of papers I have on my desk if I kept looking. So the other thing too, loyal customers, and we've touched on this. If you are a socially responsible company or a business and you partner with a nonprofit and you promote that in the community, you share what you're doing, you create more loyal customers. They think consciously about the products and services they buy, especially with the younger generations, the millennials and under, and they're going to be more loyal to your company if the values align, if your personal values and their values align. So there's a lot of psychology to this. There's a lot of business psychology to it. And then the third point, and I love this, I have a marketing background, journalism, positive public attention. Folks, as a business, when you partner with a nonprofit and you promote that, you are creating positive public attention. Stop and think about how much you pay for advertising. Stop and think about how much you pay for marketing and marketing services. And then think about what you can do to promote your good work with a good cause and the good it's doing for our community, the win-win all around, the price point, the money you save. And I've got an example to share in a little bit about one of our South Florida leaders. The money he says he saves is off the charts. He couldn't pay for the type of advertising and marketing he gets from his corporate give back, from his corporate social responsible mindset. I just mumbled all those words together, but Jerry, you know what I mean. The positive PR is really important, and I'm sure you've seen examples of that.
Well, it is, but I want to reinforce something that Raelyn has said many times, because I don't want to have us get off track here. And this is not the hard-bitten business mindset that I'm getting ready to articulate. There is something really feel-goodish about leaders and members of an organization being involved in giving back. There is something about feeling good about what you're doing that can change how you feel about everything in your life, and in particular about how you feel about the place you work. Because we all know that for most of us, we spend more time with the people we work with or for than we do the partners in our lives. At least for 5 days out of the week, typically that's true, even though COVID's changed where we do some of our work these days. The fundamental fact is there is a feel-good factor here that can't be ignored. When people are doing something for others, they feel good about that. And that is why involvement, engagement in not-for-profit activities is so important. And by the way, when Raelyn talks about engaging with not-for-profits, it's not just write a check. It's not just sit on a board. It's being involved in what that organization does. The volunteerism that takes place in not-for-profits, one is how not-for-profits tend to be able to do what they do as effectively as they do, because their cost of delivering the service is positively impacted by the thing called volunteerism. But the benefit of it, of a corporate involvement in a not-for-profit, is almost greater for how it makes people feel when they're volunteering in that organization. And when it's a cause that resonates with them, which is, by the way, important in making sure that you have causes that you're involved in that the people in your organization feel good about, because that gets them more engaged in the volunteer aspect, gets them more engaged in the caring, and for their own business of writing a check. So in my mind, we don't ever want to lose sight of the fact that giving back to the society makes people feel good too. It isn't just good for your business, but it makes people feel good. And when people feel good, they feel better about everything they're doing in their lives.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And this last one, engaged employees, more creative employees, who can't benefit from that? Well, I'd love to have a staff that comes to work every day that's always creative and feels good. And these things can help really foster that mentality. getting out in the community, seeing the good that you're doing. So we've talked about that quite a bit, but I do want to just say one last thing on positive public attention, the PR behind promoting your partnership with a nonprofit. A lot of people think, yeah, it feels a little icky. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. And here's our answer to that. And this is what a lot of national experts as well will tell you. Go ahead and brag a little. Listen, do not be afraid when you get positive public attention for your business's good work with a nonprofit to promote it. And here's why. Here's why you need to brag. You are opening doors for that nonprofit when you promote the work, when you post about it, when you publicize it, when you press release it. You are now giving the nonprofit free marketing and advertising. You're connecting them, your business, by bragging humbly in the right way, is giving that nonprofit exposure to folks that never probably even knew they existed if it's a smaller nonprofit. You're a door opener. They don't always have big marketing and advertising budgets, and maybe you don't either, but collective self-promotion of the positive work that you do is good for both of you. So don't be afraid to brag. And I think that's really important. Jerry, you're smiling, but that's one of my favorite slides.
Yeah, you really like that word brag.
I don't like the word brag, but it's the best. I don't like the word brag,
No,
but I don't have
I understand. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. Let me say it slightly differently, and that is that if you don't tell people what you're doing, they probably won't know.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
And so you can call it bragging or you can call it telling, but what you have to do is you have to make sure people know what you're doing. And there's a reason for that too. You want your customers to know because you've just seen the statistics that say customers want to know what I'm doing. The customers want to know that I care and I'm giving back. You want your associates in your firm to know because you want them to understand that you are in fact giving back. And by the way, you want them to know because you want them to get involved. If you pick 2 or 3 organizations that you're going to work with and that you're going to be supporting in one way or another, and by the way, not all support has to be check writing. It can be exactly what Raelyn just said. It can be talking about their cause so that you are in a position to be able to communicate to the world about the value of their cause. Yes. You become their free PR campaign, all right? So it is critical that you make sure people know what you're doing, because a lack of awareness is basically a notion that you're doing nothing. So the reason she says brag is because a lot of people worry about blowing smoke about how wonderful they are, all right? And that's not what you're doing here. What you're doing is you're talking about, you're communicating to the world outside, I'm committed to this, and here's why. Here's what we're doing, and here's the good we're doing. And the customers and the community at large, people who are not yet your customers, will notice that. Yes. And when your employees notice it, they feel good about you and your organization, not just about themselves.
They feel good about working there.
So
and
brag.
Listen, I will take another word over brag any day. I struggled to come up with one on that slide, so I just left it at the word brag, because it is in how you say it, how you position it, how you write it. And one more thing on that before we switch to some examples, because I do want to get in some specific examples. So as you're watching this, you can brainstorm and think about your own business and tie-ins. You know, there are a lot of awards out there for companies that promote that do good work in the community and promote their good work in the community. Do not be afraid to go after an award to recognize your company, your business's own good work. It was very surprising to me to learn a few years ago that a lot of companies that get these awards self-nominate. I thought that was horrible. I no longer think that, because you know what? If you're doing good work and you want to bring attention to the cause and the mission, you're partnering with a nonprofit because the mission matters to you. The work, the service they're providing, the gap they're filling in society is important to you. So if there's awards out there, don't be afraid to go after them and self-nominate. I first thought it was horrible. I now completely understand why small businesses and big businesses will put themselves out there for awards. So I'm going to move on to some examples because I'm watching the clock here. We're going to try to keep this at our hour time limit. Now, this is a national example of a company that has been really growing and expanding. Jerry, it's a makeup company. Your wife, your lovely, beautiful wife, Lois, may be familiar with Thrive Cosmetics. Look at the name, folks. Cosmetics instead of cosmetics. And they trademarked the line, "We're bigger than beauty." So every time I buy a product, and I'm going to tell you, I buy a lot from them, they donate one to women who are in shelters, women's shelters, or breast cancer survivors of some type. So if I buy a mascara, a cancer survivor gets a mascara. And guess what? It makes me feel great. Number one, I love mascara. And number two, somebody else is getting some benefit from my dollar. And it's a great example. So, a small business in the community, let's say you make organic soaps. Buy one, get one is an easy concept, a national concept shared here. You could do that with any business that has a product or service that it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg to double and give back. So, that's one example. This other one I really like, it's with Bissell Vacuums. Okay, they've started the Bissell Pet Foundation. Actually, it's been around for quite a while. And what do vacuums do? They clean up all that annoying dog hair that our beloved pets and cats leave everywhere. So they've created a pet foundation and they give back so much money off the purchases of vacuums to feeding animals, to sheltering animals. So they've got a product that works with animals that all animal lovers need, and they're giving money back to a cause that directly ties into the work that they do. So think about your business. What nonprofit mission connects directly with this product or service you provide? Research, see who's out in there in the community. Call us. We can tell you, we know a lot of the nonprofits out there in South Florida. But think about those examples. And I really feel like those two are a good examples at a national level that could be easily localized. You don't have to start a foundation, folks. I'm not saying that. A donation is good. You don't have to start a foundation. But Jerry, you did some work with Junior Achievement. And as I recall, by the time you were done, about 80 employees, I was working for you at the time in a different company, about 80 of us were involved in a cause you cared about that became kind of the company's mission.
Well, uh, I'm going to tell a story that Raelyn's never heard, I don't think.
What?
Yeah, this is one you've never heard.
Okay.
Back when I was in high school, which seems like a long time ago, back when I was in high school, towards my junior or senior year, they gave us a routine test. It was called the Cuter Preference Test. It may not be in existence today. I have no idea whether it's being used in schools or not, but it was used quite a bit back then. And the objective of this was to try to help us focus on what we were going to do with our lives. So it was really an attempt to try to see what are the areas that might be what you would want to make your career out of. And it was a very wide gamut of stuff. And they asked tons of questions. Do you like this? Do you like that? How does this compare? Do you like this more than that? All that kind of stuff. When I took that test, I ended up, this is an admission she's never heard before, I ended up with 2 career prospects that I scored very high in both, very high in both. And when they talked to me, they said, this can't be. This can't be. It's inconsistent. It's totally, this does not make sense. And of course, my parents didn't think it made any sense either. But the 2 careers that test told me I should pursue was military officer and social worker.
Wow.
I scored very high in both. Now, I will tell you all that I actually did become a military officer. So I did part of that. I actually came close to making a career out of it, as a matter of fact. I did finally get out. I was never a social worker. But then on the other hand, I've been a social worker my entire life. Because from the very early days in my first civilian job, after I got out of the military, my first civilian job was when I participated during the first year and a half. I participated in the founding of a not-for-profit where I was board member 1 beyond the founder, and gave of myself to that cause in a pretty significant way at a time when I was not the CEO by any stretch of the imagination. I was still crawling my way up the ladder of success. But I got caught up in that not-for-profit and gave an enormous amount of my time to it to build it into something that actually turned out to be pretty successful in its cause. But it started in me participating in not-for-profit activities from that point forward. And in the bio, you heard that I've been on a whole bunch of not-for-profit boards, way too many, no doubt, but way too many. But then I'm not a spring chicken either, so I've had plenty of time to play it. But the bottom line is, I didn't take a career of social worker, but it showed up in my career. And I think that is, the reason I tell that story is because it does not matter what your primary career is. In most of us, even Jerry, this conflicted military officer, social worker, preference guy, even deep down inside Jerry, there was this desire to give up himself to others. And I think that exists in most of us. There is a sense of family and community that all of us have a yearning for, being a part of a community. And being a part of a community means giving to the community, not just taking from the community. End of my speech.
And the phone rang on cue. That was perfect.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
So Jerry, so I'm going to just share this. I did not know that, social worker and military officer, but you founded National Leadership Institute. You created a nonprofit in 2005 to give back. That we are your legacy. We are your give back. So
Right.
in essence, social work in a way has been a part of your nature from early on. So the example I was trying to get him to mention, folks, was it was Junior Achievement of South Florida. And I believe he got the majority of our company to come out for a big bowling night. We all raised funds. We all collected money. We all showed up. We had a ton of lanes full at this big Junior Achievement of South Florida event. And I can tell you, half the people in our company had never heard of Junior Achievement or what they did for kids, young entrepreneurs before that event. So we all got exposed to their great mission. And we raised money, we fundraised, we showed up. And P.S., we had a great time as a corporate family, as a company family. And that was spearheaded by Jerry. He came back and said, I'm on this board. I want to propose this to the company and let's see what happens. And we had incredible engagement and commitment to it. So it was a fond memory for me. That was one.
And let me add 2 things. Fact. One is I was an achiever when I was a kid. Yes. So I participated in Junior Achievement when I was a kid. But secondly is that the point that Raelyn just made is really critical. And it doesn't matter whether you're a 2-person organization or a 22,000-person organization. The leadership of the organization has to be committed to the causes. It can't just say, well, pick a cause and we'll write a check and be involved in it. That's not a cause commitment. That's a tax-deductible contribution, but it's not a cause commitment. And leadership, somewhere in the leadership ranks, has to be a commitment to it, and it has to be enough so that the organization is committed to it. And that's what Raelyn is describing, is that when we did that bowl-a-thon It was fun.
Mhm.
It raised money for something I cared about. And there are a whole bunch of people who became aware of what junior achievement does for young kids as they're weaving their way through school, and teaches them about our society and about the economic system that we live in. So yeah, it was an important commitment on our part, but it takes leadership. So depending on where you are in your organization, you can lead your part of the organization to make a difference.
Yeah. And that was Jerry coming back to our company saying, okay, folks, I want to get involved in this. And he got the buy-in from us. And PS, we got to leave work a little bit early and they fed us. They fed us and it was fun. It was fun. We raised money and it was fun. So, okay, so to summarize, and we have one more example. Look for a cause connection. What product or service do you offer as a business? What cause might connect to it? Is there a national campaign that you might catch on to, like Thrive Cosmetics, that you could localize? And really think about what cause moves you the most and what might motivate your staff. Have a staff meeting, talk about it. I bet the people in your business will have ideas that could really lead you to a powerful collaboration, which is something that we've done. And I want to talk about this before we wrap up. So, Jerry, one of your project near and dear to my heart is Board Match Now. And we said this off the top. We specialize in board training and leadership development, and we now have this new tool called Board Match Now. It's like a dating app for nonprofits and board member candidates, business leaders in the community who want to get involved, who want to give back. So we've created this app, but I have to tell you, the story of the app is a whole nother webinar. It's out there, it's a resource, it's a community connection tool. It can connect businesses or business leaders and nonprofits. But you did this, you made it happen through one of your companies because there was a connection in the work you do and the mission that you believe in. You connected the dots so that we could start this program.
Yeah, we look. I started the National Leadership Institute because I spent all those times on all those boards and got frustrated with the effectiveness of the boards, and quite frankly, the level of understanding of what board leadership was all about by the board members themselves. So, National Leadership Institute was born with a commitment to say, I believe so strongly in not-for-profits, it is essential that those boards be effective, because without an effective board, a not-for-profit could flounder badly. And so that's why we started the National Leadership Institute. And our desire in our company to be able to support this, quite frankly, vision that Raelyn had of saying, Jerry, you want to talk about bringing these people up to a level of capacity as board leaders. What I find is that the vast majority of these not-for-profits out there are struggling to find the right kinds of people to be able to put on their board so that they can have the kind of board leadership that they need. And so for me, it resonated with my desire to have an effective board. And Raelyn is saying, Jerry, education is one thing, but we need to provide a way in which we can get the right people on these boards to help these causes. So it was real easy for me to get on board and to try to help make sure that we could raise the money to be able to create this vision that Raelyn had, which is now a reality.
Yeah, and I certainly can never thank him enough for allowing us this opportunity or making this opportunity happen. And the connection here, folks, is, if you're struggling what to do, if one of your staff members, an employee comes to you and says, I want to serve on a board, let them, encourage them, because a board, there's this daunting proposition to being a board member. A lot of people think you have to be a C-suite executive or you have to have a certain type skill set or resume. And the truth is, and again, this is a whole different topic for a whole nother webinar, but everybody has something to give. And there good board members are found within your staff. Just allowing your staff to become a board member on a cause that they care about and giving them maybe a little bit of flexibility and support could be a game changer. So I mentioned an example, and I really want to share this, Jerry, and I haven't shared this with you before today. There's a gentleman, a company in Broward County. It's called Allied Kitchen and Bath, and they do bathroom remodels and kitchen remodels, and they sell products and services that help with the remodel. Beautiful work. Bill Feinberg, I talked to him last week about his vision for corporate social responsibility. They said, we're not a big business. We can't write big checks. But you know what we can do? We can open our showroom to nonprofits and let them host their events here for free. We've got a kitchen. We can have food catered and brought in nicely. We can cook in our kitchen. So I think they just did a big event with LifeNet for families, and they brought in celebrity chefs and they cooked. So when they actually were growing, they redesigned their showroom with the idea that they wanted nonprofits to come in and host their events there for free. So they don't write big checks, and those are his words, and he said I could quote him, but they give so much in terms of space, opportunity, connections, exposure. They just opened up their doors to the nonprofit community. And I applaud Bill and his brothers and the team at Allied Kitchen and Bath, because they started that way years ago, and they built it into their expansion plan. So how cool is that? It was it was a really easy way to do it. So of course I asked him if we could host an event there, Jerry, but we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that later. So let's go to Angel, if you're out there. I think it's time for questions. I think we've covered quite a bit. Maybe we answered all the questions. I don't know.
Well, we certainly ran out of time, that's for sure.
That's
Shocking,
funny
shocking.
that you say that. I was just about to say, I'm always torn at the end of any presentation that you guys give, because it's so fascinating and it's so enthralling, but you leave nothing to question. Everything is so detailed. It's great. So if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and type those down below. I do have Facebook Live open. If you see me looking down, that's kind of what I'm checking. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead and write them. We'll ask them. I do have a couple of questions for you guys though. So, and I would like to touch base too on the whole statistic about consumers. As a consumer, that is so true. I tend to gravitate towards companies that I feel they're doing something else. They're not just selling a product. And you're right, I will spend a little bit more money if I feel like it's giving back to something. Particularly, I'm a sucker for animals. So if it's something cute and furry, I definitely hop on board for that. And I think if you guys take a look around at the stuff that you buy, you probably will find that as well. So it's not just, a number on a page. So I guess my first question would be, what would you say to the small business owners who say, I can't afford to give my staff a few hours off, let alone a full day off to volunteer?
Oh, I want to jump in, Jerry.
Go for it.
I would say you can't afford not to.
Okay.
I would say you can't afford not to. Go back to what I said earlier, and again, in my pile of environmentally friendly papers I've collected here to prepare for this webinar, there are statistics that show the cost of a day. You can add up how much it costs to give your employees a day off, right? You can get that dollar amount, that total amount in your hand, but compare it to what you would spend on marketing, advertising, PR. If your employees are out in the community volunteering, doing good work for that one day off, think about how much exposure you get. Wear your company t-shirts, put on a hat if you're in the South Florida sunshine, brand yourself as much as you want to brand, but put a value to what that marketing would cost if you tried to buy it in another way, and then factor in the employee satisfaction, the excitement it gives, the break from the office and the day-to-day tedium of the job sometimes. I think you can't afford not to. You cannot afford to not give them the day off.
Absolutely. I would almost think
I can't do any better than that. I can't do any better than that.
Yeah.
I would almost think that if you can afford to give multiple employees the time to do that as well, it's a great bonding experience. They get to get out there and it's a team building experience. So I guess my next question is, the traditional tried and true method for businesses to partner is to be an event sponsor. You give money and you get your logo and brand out there publicly. Isn't that enough, or does there need to be more?
Well, I'll jump on that one and simply say that's good. That works, because checks matter to not-for-profits. So that's a good thing. And the cost to them of giving you space for your logo and your brand is practically zero. So it's a good deal for both sides, all right? But I get back to the point that I made earlier, the point that Raelyn was using on the experience where we were in a company together. Getting employees engaged in that cause is what really makes the difference long run. And their engagement will go beyond what you started. Getting them focused on giving back, it gets addictive. And they will be engaged more than what you gave them the time off to do. And that means that the not-for-profit now is getting the benefit of human capital invested in their cause, not just the financial capital that you brought to the table when you made a contribution.
Okay.
And nonprofits everywhere are saying, but wait, we do need the checks. We need the checks. Please write,
Oh, no.
please sponsor us. They want, so we're not saying let that go, because no money, no mission. That's critically important. But it doesn't have to be just an event sponsorship. There are so many ways a business can get involved and give back. I'll sit down and brainstorm. That's our encouragement today. Talk about it with your team.
Yeah, and I think especially now, of course, again, everybody still wants that check, but we're in a time where it might not be as easy to give that out, but you can give back in other ways, which is something to remember.
Yes.
So what would you suggest to employees or staff that would like to bring a cause to the attention of leadership? How do you have some tips and tricks to help them get that out in front of everybody where they're being receptive about it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, I
like
think
that.
that's a great question. And I think the answer to that is always start with your boss. Wherever you are in the organization, start with your boss. But before you go to your boss, talk to your colleagues. Get them interested so that you're not a lone ranger. If you're alone, your voice is one. But if you talk to a number of colleagues and you get a bunch of colleagues who all buy in to this idea you have now, it's the force of size that will bring pressure to bear on the organization. When one employee speaks up and says something, that's one thing. But when 10 say, hey, we think this would be a good idea, it's hard for management to ignore that.
Absolutely. It probably helps bring it to fruition a little bit more. That's a great idea, though. Yeah.
Strength in numbers. There's always strength in numbers, right?
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. I don't see any questions down here in the chat below, nor on Facebook. But if you would like to ask some questions afterwards, I know that Jerry is always pretty available. Raelyn, are we allowed to give out your info as well?
Oh, absolutely. Of course. Of course.
Wonderful. So
Got
we're
it.
a little shy today and we have some questions that we'd like to ask after. We're going to make sure that you have their information available and you can reach out with any questions that you may have. And stay tuned because I heard that we probably have 2 more webinars coming in the works. That's what that sounded like to me. One on the app and one on something else. So
Listen, don't give us a chance to talk about board matching and getting business leaders and community leaders into nonprofit boards, because we will talk for 2 hours. So you got to give us a hard stop on that one.
So we'll definitely be inviting them back because they are just great to listen to. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you for joining the Delray Beach Chamber. As always, you can check these out on Facebook, YouTube, or the Chamber website. And we hope you have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Thank
Take
you so
care.
much.
Take care, all.